Hello there commanders and welcome to Total War Pharaoh Early Access Preview. In this video I want to focus on Pharaoh entirely from a perspective of a competitive multiplayer tournament player that I myself am. I also recently came back to organizing, hosting and casting Total War tournaments after Total War Arena's undeserved death. After a huge success of Sun Tzu's first two Warhammer tournaments, we are looking into organizing a Pharaoh tournament too. Therefore, I would like to explore all the possibilities Pharaoh can offer to competitive tournament players and invite you, dear viewers, to form and inform me in the comments of your opinion, because the Pharaoh tournament is only going to happen if our community wants it. And let's start with the most important part then, army rosters. We have 8 factions divided into 3 cultures. We have Amenes, Ramses, Seti, and Tausret representing the Egyptians. We have Irsu and Bey representing the Canaanites, and then we have Burunta and Supilyuma, 10 out of 10 pronunciation, represent the Hittites, something like that. We, tournament players, don't care about the lore. We care about roster variety, balance, all that stuff. So let's just drop all the pretense from the very beginning and let's just get into the meat of it. So each faction allows you to pick a generic general and the named character that the faction is named after. So going alphabetically, here we have Amenmes, and he can go with 4 different weapons, so we have some kind of commander customization. And Pharaoh went the route of going entirely historical, back to Total War roots, so it's not a singular powerful character, it's just a general accompanied by a guard. So here we can see his unit consists of 135 soldiers, obviously depending on unit size, which I believe I have set to highest, which is extreme. So this is also something new, because in Warhammer 3 the highest you can go is just huge, I believe. So you can see his stats change, even his armor, his shield type and all that stuff, along that side with his cost. That's true for all the commanders, so looking into what kind of weapons they have available and how they change their armor and other bonuses and whatnot is going to offer, quite a lot of variety, despite having only 2 possible generals. So even if 2 of the same factions meet and 2 of the same generals meet, they can still play vastly different depending on the weapon they select. That is pretty cool. And from a viewer perspective, from a commentator perspective, it is going to be definitely exciting to see what the players will start gravitating towards, especially in the early days when meta isn't set in stone. It is very much fluid. Going on, you will definitely notice what is right below it, which are abilities. We have various abilities. We have abilities related to the weapon type, and I believe how they work. And this is a huge improvement over Warhammer. This is taken directly from Total War Arena, by the way. So again, pay attention, CA. We have proper descriptions of abilities, and therefore we can really make an informed decision and just know what to expect and what they're going to do once we deploy them on the battlefield, instead of just guessing how they apply, how they work, and what the hell is going to happen. So, now I have aired that grievance with Warhammer 3, let's focus on what I like in this particular instance about Pharaoh. So, we have Archer 3, this is just, most leveled up version of the ability. So, target self, so targets the general unit. Target if, unit does not use sling, unit does not use javelin. So, essentially you have to use a bow, or I imagine any other weapon. So if you're using a sword, this should also work. Which is kind of weird. It should be just target if unit uses a bow would be way simpler. But maybe that's not the way they're going for. Maybe they are using precisely that because they want for that ability to work with swords. I don't know what the intention is, but at least we can make a clear decision. We can clearly know what this ability is going to do. And then it affects allies. Here I would like to see it affects self, comma, and allies, or without and self, comma, allies, or self and allies. Because allies can be just, you know, everybody except the unit is casting it. Should be a possibility as well. It was in Arena. There were abilities in Arena where if you cast it with a unit, everybody around it received the buff, but not the unit itself. For example, Zhuge Liang's healing ability, whatever it was called. Way of the Wind? Possibly, something like that. So yes, I've tested this ability. It affects both the unit that is using, casting it is constant after all, and also units around it within a 60-meter radius as advertised, obviously. And well, it just adds you some range. Then we have similar stuff following for every other weapon type. But again, this is target if, and target is self. So if you have a slinger unit, I would imagine they would get plus 25 range as well. I haven't tested that. That is something to still test further, but I have just received my early access copy of the game. I just simply haven't had the time. The embargo drops tomorrow, so I have literally just one evening to play around with the game and, well, do this video for you. So, it goes on. As you can see, the list here is getting quite longer as there's a much wider variety of melee weapons, but for some reason range weapons are not included. Maybe that is a hidden I like the word here in English, I'm sorry, I'm not a native speaker, I suck at English. But in a condition, a hidden condition, there we go. Took me just half a minute to figure out a word. So, those are the weapon type related abilities, which I have noticed the generic generals don't have. So that's the advantage over the named characters over the regular generic generals. But on the other hand, these abilities are exactly the same across all other named characters. So cool, the named characters get something special to make them special distinguishable from generic generals, but they don't really have anything to make them distinguishable between each other. So it doesn't add as much variety as you would hope for, at least what, you know, Warhammer or even Three Kingdoms got us used to. So that is a little bit of a disappointment, at least for me. Going on, the other abilities are also really cool. For example, Shields Up. It is an AoE around your general. So the general tells his troops around him or her to raise their shields, protect themselves from arrows, and then you have the effects. They go much slower, but they get plus 50 missile parry. And that is plus 50%. This is plus 50% to what they already have. So for example, this general has 45% missile block. Does that raise it to 90%? Is it flat? Or does it raise by 50% of what he already has? So it raises by 22.5, giving us 67.5 in total. Then no, it is not very specific. It was very specific in Arena. In Arena, you always knew what you're getting. So they can still up their game in terms of abilities descriptions. So this is a step down or step back compared to Total War Arena, but it is a step forward compared to Warhammer. It's just still kind of baffling to me that we are still stuck with vague ability descriptions, which is not something like a complicated code or anything. Just describe what the ability does as precisely as you can. And it's not like you have to write an entire A4 page about it. Arena did it very precisely. And there were no pages of ability descriptions there. So it is entirely possible, and it has been done by the very same studio. Well, maybe not the very same, but Creative Assembly, just not Sophia. Anyway, this continues. Flanking maneuver, AoE around the general, or rather not AoE, just targetable. So you cast it on a single unit, make it faster, make it charge faster, make it lose stamina over time, and also give it a passive ability called Flanking Attack Improved, but a lot of units already have that anyway. So they won't benefit from it as much. And you know, it goes on. Inspire, single unit plus 15 morale, inspiring shout, all the units around, 7 morale, at all costs. This I believe just sucks. But there's that. Hit them hard. This is pretty big. Just straight up buff to your melee damage on the cost of some melee defense. I would say it's pretty good. Take aim, pretty good for archers. Then again, from what I've tested, archers kinda suck. So ranged meta isn't going to be a thing. It also wasn't in Troy. We should really start drawing comparisons to Troy, which is something that I planned to, but then forgot, because I don't script my videos or anything. I just go and talk. So there's that. But given that this game is essentially a Troy reskin, the meta more or less is going to be the same. I don't know how much of a competitive scene there was for Troy, because back when Troy released, I was busy playing Total War Arena because it was still alive, so I don't know much about it. But from what I've tested in both Troy and here, ranged units just don't make sense. They deal way less damage than they should. The melee units just close the distance, render the ranged units useless, and that's all she wrote, pretty much. So there is that. The ammunition is also very low. The units run out of ammunition extremely quickly. And a ranged unit without ammunition is just a much weaker melee unit. And given that with that ammunition, it can barely do anything, just buy a melee unit. Way better use of your gold. So there is that. And then goes on. This is a nice ability, lowers the morale of a single enemy. There we go. We have like Leonidas is hold the line. Here's hold your ground. Very smooth. That last, from what I've read, not very good. And then charge. I mean, there's no cavalry here. The most we get are chariots, and most of the chariots, or if not all of them, are ranged chariots. Don't know how they will perform in melee. But I guess if you have just a regular melee general, which is recommended, just have him use this ability right before the main line charges, and there we go, you have some more damage. So yeah, you have 6 ability slots. By the way, they behave just like in Warhammer, so if you pick one, the following ones get slightly cheaper. Alright, keep it in mind. Now, when it comes to unit variety, I haven't had that much time to look around, but all the factions seem to have some kind of variety in this area. So infantry, missile cavalry, and chariots. These are pretty much all three types that we are going to get. So these two guys are, or these two factions are from the same culture, but as you can see, there are differences. Ramses has better melee units. Amen-Mes has better ranged units. Chariots, slightly different, but two of them each. Ramses is more on the extremes. But then come common units that are shared between all the factions. And there are Pharaoh elite units and Great King elite units. And there is also a setting here. If we take it off unlimited unit capacity, then that means that we can only pick units from one of those groups. So either pick Pharaoh elite units or Great King elite units. If I just delete my army here and start picking these, here. There we go. I start picking these. You can see this exclamation mark here is going to appear, and it says you cannot pick these units because you've already picked those. If I pick one of them, all the previous ones disappear. So you have to make a choice from which group you'd like to have some units. If like these guys are the best and these guys are the best, you have to pick one of them. You can't do both. So there is some kind of decision making to go there, like min-maxing essentially. So that is going to be interesting. And then you have a much larger pool of native units. So then again, they are shared between all the factions. They are exactly the same among all factions, but you can also just pick one of them. So if I pick Lower Egypt native units, as you can see, my elite Pharaoh unit doesn't disappear, or elite King unit. But I cannot pick now Sinai and Red Genu native unit. These guys are going to disappear then. So there are two separate groups, which is kind of not very clearly stated here. Just all units, kind of. But yeah, it's fast enough to figure it out, right? There we go. That's the variety of units. I mean, we could go through every single faction just briefly, because I don't want this video to go too long. There are probably videos diving deep into these units, maybe not from a competitive perspective, because barely anyone does that. So I would like to think I'm unique like that, but then again, that doesn't maybe necessarily attract the biggest audience. Oh, these guys don't even have chariots, they just have infantry and missile infantry. So we do have some variety. So you can kind of look at it at similar level to Shogun, I guess, if you're looking at earlier titles, because Shogun was just all Japanese, right? If you went to just normal custom battles with no avatar, then all the factions were the same, apart from like one or two special units. So one at the beginning, well, depending on what their specialty was, but you get a point. And only then through DLCs, like they got some more special units with, again, just one for each faction. There we go. These are just quick run through of all the possible rosters. I haven't hovered over every single unit. But that's not the point of today's video. Maybe I'll make a separate video just going over every single unit. Let me know in the comments if you would like to have that. Now, let's move on to the second part, which are maps. And here, sadly, I am disappointed. Looking at these maps, it is very easily, I mean, we can very quickly tell that they have just been copy-pasted from the campaign. None of them are symmetric. Also, from what I've noticed, I think I've played on this map around a little bit, or maybe on a similar map. The starting positions are random, so you can either go south, north, starting positions or deployment areas or whatever, deployment zones, or you can go west, east. And there's no setting like that here, so it's just random. And one map can be balanced. There is a map that has another reef that's just like straight through the center somewhere. Right, so, let's say this one. So we have west, east starting positions, then that's mostly fine. But if you have south, north, then well, you have a river crossing battle suddenly. And a campfest, I imagine. Maybe then arches would be useful. Maybe. Still tapped it. So yeah, it will be very difficult for a tournament organizer like myself to find a good set of maps. Like, some of them are very, variant, right? And then you have those, which is just plain desert. So either bite the bullet, make the tournament fair and competitive, and just have it all be on flat deserts with no map variety whatsoever, or you sprinkle in some spice and go for the more unique maps, like this one. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on, but none of it is symmetrical. Right? So how can we talk about a fair tournament here? We can talk about a fun tournament though, that's for sure. So I believe we should approach tournament organization from that angle. If the game itself can't really take itself seriously and provide us with a set of balanced maps, then why we should treat it seriously? And this from this angle. Anyway, let's continue. We have different battle types. Sadly, no domination or anything similar. Just land, siege, ambush, minor settlement, just the very basics. Then you have civilization level, which is sort of just changes the environment, like if it's, nice and sunny or dark and gritty, stuff like that. Then you have weather. Sweltering, so it's like super hot. Rain and sandstorm. Sandstorm is like units take damage over time, and like all these possibilities just make range units garbage, or even more garbage than they are. There was also a thunderstorm. Maybe thunderstorm isn't available on this particular map. Yeah, and there's a storm as well, and there's a fog in here as well. Kind of weird that the set of weathers you can select is different different depending on the map. I mean, from campaign perspective, it makes sense, and we've established these are just copy pasted over from campaign. There are no custom made maps for multiplayer. Nobody thought of that somehow. So from campaign perspective, it makes sense. There are different climates depending on where you are, where some weathers would just not occur. Apparently thunderstorm isn't available around the river. Would have known. So, you can also have predicted weather, so it would change, for example, from dry to rain over the course of the tournament, over the course of battle. So just in the middle, I don't know if it's randomly or just occurs at a certain point in time, like set point in time, where it changes, and then time of day. Does it I don't think being it at night affects stuff like visibility, range and accuracy or something like that. Although maybe it should. If weather affects it, then why the time of day? But yeah, those are the maps. Now let's actually go onto a battlefield. Unit cat appears being exceeded. What? What? Don't I have just random auto-generated armies? Okay, now I do. Let's go. Let's go to the battlefield and show off something that I'm very positive about. But then again, it isn't very unique to Pharaoh because it has been in Troy. But it isn't in Warhammer. So I feel it should be in Warhammer. Simple as that. Which are just more terrain types. So already you can see on the minimap, right? These yellow patches are tall grass. There you go. Tall grass provides cover for light infantry units. I guess these are heavy guys. They are not hidden. Do I have light? These are light, I imagine. They are hidden. There we go. Yeah, so that is something that I can do consideration. And then we have sand. Is that not sand? Is this sand? Or maybe I have to start battle. Is this sand? This is not sand. I'm disappointed. There is shadow water. So there we go. And now you can see, because I have selected light infantry, I see the effects of light infantry. If I select heavy infantry, it should tell me how it affects heavy infantry. There we go. That's pretty nice. So there's tall grass. Wow, amazing rendering, by the way. Max settings also. So we have forest and scrubs. But I believe we also have just a regular forest. But is it on this map? So just forest and scrubs. But seeing unit abilities, or not abilities, just descriptions, like where they can hide. Some units can hide in forest and scrubs, and some units can hide in forests. But so far, on every single map I've tested, there weren't many, but all of them so far, there were no regular forest. It was always forests and scrubs. So there we go. And also, the thing I mentioned, we have a river crossing battle here, while we also could have been deployed like this. And then we have a nice, interesting scenario with river in the center. We could either deploy on both sides and try to go like that, or you can deploy heavy on one side, see what the enemy does. Maybe they can deploy on the same side and you just fight there, or they deploy on the other side and then do you meet in the middle? They try to cross early because they have like 3 crossings. Very cool map, very cool possibilities, but you have 50% chance of stacking, being stuck with this. So, especially for a tournament, when things such as placement on the map is random, that's not very good. Then again, as I said, fun, not serious tournament is definitely achievable. And it would be quite a nice change of pace compared to our, as I love the description that Tim gave it, unapologetically competitive tournaments. I think that very accurately describes what our tournaments are. They are very unapologetically competitive. The core principle is to make it as fair as possible for the players, so that whoever wins, like, knows they are the best. It's like there's no random chance of going unlucky or just mismatching your opponent something. The better player should always win. Obviously there can be upsets. Oh, there we go, I found sound. Ooh. Heavy infantry really has a tough time going through sand, huh? And there's also mud. Is there mud in this map? Over here. There's mud. Apparently, going for mud is less tough than going for sand. There's 35% speed penalty. There's charge speed 40. Still 30% speed. So going for sand is almost as tough as going through mud. So that's interesting. Anyway, those are the kind of things I wanted to show off, different terrain types. Whereas in Warhammer, we have shallow water, forests, and that's it. Here we have forests, and scrubs. Please find me a forest in this game somewhere on one of the maps. And many, many more. Anyway, there is one more thing I am very excited about for the tournament. And this is also something that comes directly from Total War Arena, which are these various unit abilities. Obviously, Total War Arena wasn't the first one to do unit abilities, but it has been first to do unit abilities like that. So ranged is you don't have here, just a charge, but I have stuff like rapid fire, take aim. Rapid fire is literally just taken from Arena. Take aim, kind of like snipe, let's say, just slightly different. You also have different projectile types. You can have regular projectiles or fire arrows, and being historically accurate, fire arrows absolutely suck. So at least there's that. Never use them, essentially. But you can light forests on fire, and if a unit goes through forest and fire, it takes damage over time. That is something cool, but it is still a waste of resources. Anyway, have abilities like Heroic Advance. We can tell the unit to Heroic Advance forward, kind of form like this, and now they will just push in that direction. And if there were enemy units in front, they would just be slowly pushed back. And you can also do this in reverse. So if you're losing ground, or maybe, let's say, you have engaged the enemy here, they are stuck in shallow water, you are on top of sand. And apparently, being in sand is worse than being in shallow water, because it also debuffs your melee fighting abilities, whereas being in shallow water doesn't. Why? I don't know. Weird. But this is a situation where you would like to retreat from there as quickly as possible, but maybe you wouldn't want to show your backs to the enemies. So you can just slowly retreat while still fighting, and also increasing melee defense at the cost of reducing melee attack. They're doing it very, very slowly though, not as quickly as they were advancing. But I've also seen abilities or like traits of units that, if they're disciplined, they can retreat faster while going backwards. Storm Warriors. These units suffer low burns from rain, storm, and thunderstorm. Interesting. So yeah, some of that, very cool. And then you have Spearwall formation. So I guess you just stand your ground, and you are much stronger from the front. So good for holding choke points. From what I remember, Total War Troy had quite a lot of. I can adjust the width of the formation. Also, okay, that's weird. Troy had map designs much more reminiscent of Total War Arena, but I may be speaking from like minor settlement battles perspective. But I think like the random maps that I was getting on. Oh, there we go. The weather has changed to rain. Random maps I was getting on the open field battles, they were also quite reminiscent of Total War Arena. And this map kind of also takes from Total War Arena, but it's clearly not custom made. It just, I mean, it is, because all of them are, but they didn't have multiplayer in mind, definitely, and definitely not competitive multiplayer while designing this map, or any other for that matter. So, I think that concludes the video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll see them literally tomorrow when the video will come out. I'll read them, and then, based on your comments, I'll possibly make a follow-up video. After what I've seen, I would really like to do a Pharaoh tournament, but I wouldn't treat it as seriously as I do Warhammer tournaments, or incoming in Season 2, other Total War tournaments. So we're talking Napoleon, Shogun 2, Rome 2, Attila, Four Kingdoms, etc, etc. So, with that said, I'll see you on Tournament Battlefield, Commanders.
Everything is so through!